Hey there, soccer fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Sons of a Pitch, an American soccer podcast. I'm your host, Nick Pateris, and tonight I'm joined by my good friend and fellow host, Michael Yalmy, to start our annual preseason team previews. We are going to review FC Dallas, NYCFC, and Real Salt Lake to get you all the information you need to know on those teams going into the season. Afterwards, we're also going to discuss some various headlines from around the league, especially big injury up north, some re-signings, as well as some various fluff pieces from around the league. Fun kind of TIFO-related news, as well as our thoughts on the Chicago Fire signing Frank Klopas as an assistant coach. I have some very strong feelings about that. We're going to get to all of that and more in this episode of the Sons of a Pitch, an American soccer podcast. Well, hello, soccer fans. Once again, I am Nick Pateris, your host, here with my good friend and fellow host, Michael Yalmy, to go over all the latest news around Major League Soccer and around the American soccer landscape. I'm going to apologize for my voice here. I've been fighting a cold, and I kind of feel like this is late night soccer talk. Like we're going to get a little, hey, everybody, welcome to the late night conversation. Like it's very... I don't know.
Slow down, Nick. Slow down.
Yeah. Like, what's my target audience here with this voice? You know, I'm trying to think of the character from Saturday Night Live, the ladies' man. That's what I'm thinking of. Like, hey, why don't we have some Cavassier and discuss draft picks? Like, yeah, like that's how I feel right now. How you doing?
Oh man, doing good. Feeling much better. Ready to jump into these team previews and get started with this process. Got a lot of information coming your way. Ready to rock and roll, Nick.
All right, well then why don't you start us off with your first team that we're going to review here, FC Dallas. I'm sorry, before we do start it, are you going to be the one, like you put this list together, any particular order for reviewing these teams?
No particular order. What I'm trying to do is, because it's so early in the off season still, with training camp just getting underway just the other day, still a lot of moves to be made. Just kind of trying to look at the teams who are already kind of established, already have their signings put together, that don't have a lot of open spots left, so that we kind of know what we're working with in those previews. So that's kind of the method behind the madness. It's not perfect, but one piece that I did want to share, though, is the first team preview is FC Dallas, and that is going out to our awesome listener, Michael Holbert from a big FC Dallas fan, who is a constant and frequent listener to our show and submitting questions and whatnot, interacting with us. So I wanted to make sure that we got his team up there first, since he's so dedicated to this show, and even put it out there on Twitter that he purchased some swag. So that's the method behind the madness.
And you listeners, if you want to join our conversation, if you want to follow along and interact with us on Twitter, you can follow us at SOP Soccer, or on Facebook at Sons of a Pitch Soccer, or email us at podcast@sonsofapitchsoccer.com. We want to thank all of our latest Twitter followers. We are right under 300 followers. We just need 2 more. So help us out, get to that 300 mark, and then we can start the push to 400. But we want to thank at Trey Island, Jordy Collins, Reckham Tech, nice Texas Tech fan, Graciela Perez, Juan Pimiento, Colton Wright, Jeremy Vittel, Chad G., the Men in Red 97, a Chicago Fire page and podcast, Spit and Fire YT at Fire Engine 97, another Chicago Fire podcast and YouTube channel, Devin Bryce Lehart, the Craig Willinger Fund, as well as at Fire Transfers. Thank you all for following us, as well as Patrick Keeler, John Amaral, Jackson Lions FC, and FC Motown Celtics. Thank you for your teams, for the individuals, for the organizations. And if any of you want to continue the conversation, shoot us a message. More than happy to have that talk with you. Mike, you got a few other announcements yourself.
Absolutely. So Got a couple big announcements here. One is with our Sons of a Pitch .redbubble.com, where you can pick up all the Sons of a Pitch swag you're looking for, like we're wearing tonight on the YouTube channel. Check it out. I just uploaded the original logo, the one that we started back when we first started as a podcast back in May of 2018. I uploaded that out there. So if you're looking for a throwback, check it out. You can find all the throwback Sons of a Pitch Redbubble swag out there that you want. So check that out. Also, YouTube. We're doing a big push on YouTube. We're taking these team previews, splitting them all up to individual videos to keep the YouTube content flowing. We've seen a good response from the CONCACAF Champions League picks and predictions video, as well as the interview that we did last week with Joe Falla. So we're really trying to work on that YouTube. So listeners, check us out on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. You're going to find a lot of content on there. Sons of a Pitch, an American soccer podcast, is the name of our YouTube channel. Find it, search it on Google, search it on your YouTube app, and please subscribe, like our stuff, share our stuff. Be much appreciated as we're continuing to grow over there. Also then, next week, actually this week, a few days from when you're listening to this, I'm actually going to be doing a kind of a little bit of a live event. So we're going to be doing some question and answers, talking about some of the breaking news that we don't discuss on the podcast here tonight, and just talk with, really interact with our listeners and our fans. So the time and place for that one is going to be at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time on Thursday. Make sure to check it out. We'll be sending out some tweets and some Facebook messages and whatnot about that. But join into a Facebook Live, a Twitter Live, as well as a YouTube Live. We will have it on all platforms. You will have myself, Mike, talking with and answering any of your questions, as well as discussing some of the news. So make sure to check that out and look out for the invites.
Great. Thank you, Mike. And with that, let's get into the reason we're here, the soccer talk with FC Dallas. So you listeners know, we're going to preview the players who have come in and out this offseason, review the designated players, figure out which kind of young players might break out, as well as look at projected starting lineups, projected MVP, most important players on the team, and then the ceiling and the floor of each team. So let's take a look at the players in for FC Dallas. Is that a typo I see, Mike? Is that Fala Picoult or Fafa Picoult?
That's Fafa Pico.
Fafa Pico,
Yeah, so,
the one that we all know, yes. Coming in from the Union to join FC Dallas, as well as Thiago Santos, a midfielder from Palmeiras, and Eddie Manjoba, a homegrown defender. All are joining FC Dallas, and from the looks of it, all look to be making an immediate impact. The players out: Eric Alexander, Christian Coleman, Edwin Giassi, Moises Hernandez, and Dom Baji. They're either out of contracts or options were declined, but in the case of Dom Baji, he was traded to Nashville to hopefully have a resurgent career with that expansion side. Just based on that, Mike, what do you think?
Kind of a quiet offseason for Dallas, not a lot of movement. I like some of their moves in. The Fafa Pico, I think he's a great player. He's a good value type player for MLS. He's going to put up some production, especially if he gets the minutes, which I fully expect he will. Thiago Santos, really don't know much about him. From Palmeiras in Brazil, that's a good club in Brazil, so obviously the guy has some talent. He's a little bit older. I believe he's in his 30s, but he should be a good standard piece for FC Dallas. That's something about Dallas. They don't have a bunch of big names. It's not, the place to find the big money, big time signings. That's not how they operate. So this guy seems kind of like the same type of mold that fits FC Dallas so well. And then Eddie Munjoma, really don't know anything about this kid. He's homegrown, and with that academy that FC Dallas has, there's going to be some good quality in that guy if he's getting signed to the first team, because that academy always puts out good talent.
Just to add a little bit more on Thiago Santos, he's been with Palmeiras for the last 4 years, and he has started almost every game for them in that time frame. So even though he's 30, he is a reliable player. Of course, now that they say that, he's probably going to go down with an injury in training camp or something like that. But he appears to be a very reliable player, a solid defender, and someone who's going to be able to get a lot of quality time for FC Dallas.
Nice. some of the players out. We got Eric Alexander, Christian Coleman, who just didn't work out. He was a decent signing that they had brought in just, I think, last year. Edwin Giassi, Moises Hernandez, and Dominic Badgie, who was traded to Nashville. The biggest one that I noticed on this one is Badgie being traded to Nashville. He was probably the only guy on this list that really contributed anything last year, outside of maybe Christian Coleman a little bit. But yeah, Dom Badgie is a good striker, so they'll miss him. But they've got some good pieces up front to make up for it.
Right. It's not a surprise that they signed Fafa Pikol after losing Dom Badgie. So try to make up for the offense. As far as their designated players, they've got Brian Acosta, Pablo Araguanis, and Santiago Mosquera. Araguanis is loaned out, so they've got two DPs in their midfield, hoping to drive that machine that is FC Dallas on the field. Brian Acosta, we know he's kind of one of those MLS household names, not a superstar, but yet a very reliable and steady player, someone who can kind of dictate the way Dallas goes. If they're having a good game, if they're having a good stretch, it's probably because Brian Acosta is playing well and really linking up the defense with the striking and the attack. As far as Mosquera, not too familiar with him and his style of play. But again, if Dallas is going to exceed expectations, just like any MLS team, you need your designated players to be the best players on the field for you.
Absolutely. Surprising with Aragonese getting loaned out to Universidad de Chile. I think the way the rules go, they can pick up a DP on loan because they can have the three DPs. If one is loaned out, they're okay because he's not technically on the roster. So be interesting to see if they pick somebody up just for the short term. I don't know if they're going to or not. My guess is they probably won't, just because they're Dallas and that's kind of how they operate. But interesting note there. Now let's talk a little bit about the breakout youngsters here, because that's a good spot for FC Dallas. They've got a lot of young guys who can make a big difference. Starting off, probably the most common on everybody's list is going to be Paxton Pomykal. What do you think about Paxton Pomykal, Nick?
I mean, it's hard to see him as a breakout youngster because we got to see how well he could play. And I know you say the same thing about Reggie Cannon, the next guy on your list there. We've gotten to see both of these guys play and play at a very high level, both for Dallas and for the U.S. men's national team when they got their couple call-ups this last year under Berhalter. So I don't know if you want to call them breakout youngsters, but at the same time, they are still youngsters. They are still developing, and they're only getting better. There were rumors that Pomykal had offers from Europe. Again, it's the MLS. It's international soccer. There's rumors about everything, so I don't know how much credit there was to that. But I'm looking for Pomykal to take those next steps to be an everyday starter and to contribute to FC Dallas's offense on a much larger scale than he did this last season. And then what do you think about Cannon and Ricardo Pepi, the other player you've listed as a youngster that could break out?
Yeah, so as far as really breaking out, I think Ricardo Pepi is the guy to talk about for Dallas. This guy lit up USL League One last year. I had watched a lot of games with TFC2, so I'm pretty familiar with League One, USL League One. This guy was, you could not stop this guy, or North Texas SC. For that matter, in USL League One. I think they won the title. These guys were, fantastic. Ricardo Pepi was scoring tons of goals, and he's kind of the next big thing to come out of their youth academy. So that one, I definitely expect him to have a breakout season. And Reggie Cannon, it's kind of tough with Paxton Pomykal and Reggie Cannon. They are so young that you want to put them in this list. But breakout, they kind of already have broken out. I think Reggie Cannon might have been the one that really overstayed his welcome as far as a breakout youngster because he's been around for a couple of years. But definitely expecting them to continue to get better and really settle in as stars in the league. I think Reggie Cannon and Paxton Pomykal really have to be starters every single game and really step up their game to be on that next level for Dallas to be a successful team.
So now that we've kind of broken down who's in, who's out, what the stars to look for? What's your projected 11?
It's a projected 11 in this one. Just as a side note for everybody, for all of these team previews, basically what I did was I went to the last game that the team played last year and used that formation. So whatever that formation was in the last game that they played, whether it be playoffs, whether it be regular season, I used that formation. So in the case of FC Dallas, it was a 4-3-3. Obviously, with some of the other teams, you're going to have different coaches, you're going to have different formations, but I'm not getting into that. I'm just using the same formation as was used at the end of the season. So for Dallas, it's a 4-3-3. My starting goalkeeper is Jesse Gonzalez, just signed a contract extension in the offseason, 4-year extension. So really hefty extension there for him. As far as the defenders, I've got Brisson starting as a wingback, Ziegler, Rito Ziegler, the Swiss international, I believe, and then Matt Hedges and Cannon as well on defense. In the midfield, I've got Mosquera, Acosta, and Pomical, as well as then for the three forwards, Barrios, Andrasic, the Cobra, and Pico. So that's the starting 11 there. Do you agree with that, Nick? Do you see there's any maybe any changes you'd make to that?
You know, when I look at it on paper, it looks like a really potent offense. It looks like Dallas is going to be able to score goals, that they should be averaging, 2-3 goals a game here with this lineup. All three of their strikers can find the back of the net, and then if you get Acosta and Pomical involved and Cannon making those long runs from the defensive third, Dallas on paper looks to have a pretty good offense. Is it going to translate? Is that going to leave their defense exposed? How are they going to play this year? Is it more a go-get-it year, or is it more of a development year? All of that taken into account is going to determine whether or not they are that team that reaches their ceiling or that team that sticks closer to their floor. But I think, Mike, your projected 11 on paper, it's a solid selection.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they really have a good lineup there. So I'm expecting some decent things for FC Dallas. Maybe not MLS Cup contenders yet, but pretty close. So one of the next piece that I want to talk about is the most important player. So every team has that one guy going into the season that has to make a big difference, has to be spot on the whole year in order for this team to be successful. I'm going to go with Jesse Gonzalez, the goalkeeper. Just as I mentioned before, just signed that 4-year big-time extension. They put their faith and belief in this guy. And he has, he's had his ups and downs throughout the years. He's shown flashes of greatness. He's shown sometimes to not be that great of a goalkeeper. So he's kind of gone up and down. He needs to be successful for this team to be successful. If he has a good season, this team will do extremely well. They have the offense. They've got the forwards, a great forward group. They've got a strong midfield. Their defense, they've got some great defenders as well. Matt Hedges is always a top defender. Ziegler's a good defender. Reggie Cannon, good on the outside. So I think it really comes down to Jesse Gonzalez as that most important player. And if he shines, so too will Dallas.
And just a little trivia about Jesse Gonzalez. He actually had the opportunity to play for both Mexico and the United States. And he played for Mexico's youth teams, but then declared for the U.S. senior team. So he's hoping to break into the USMNT at some point. So with that, Mike, what's your ceiling and floor prediction for FC Dallas?
Okay, so ceiling and floor. For the ceiling, I think if all goes well, you're looking at a higher playoff seed in the Western Conference. My best guess at this point is probably a 3rd seed in the West. So you're going to get that home playoff game. It could translate into 2 home playoff games at some point, hosting a conference final or whatnot. So that's kind of the best case scenario for Dallas with the roster that they have today. Obviously, that changes. They go out and sign a 3rd DP. They bring in some more good depth signings. That might change. But where we are today with the ceiling in Florida, that's the ceiling. As far as floor goes, I'm thinking missing the playoffs. If, they get some injuries, Jesse Gonzalez doesn't have a good season. Pomical doesn't get better. Acosta has a down season. I could see this team missing the playoffs and finishing probably just missing probably like 8th or 9th in the Western Conference.
Yeah, either that or Pomical or Cannon end up getting sold to some European club for big bucks.
True.
And hey, you're not going to pass up a a $10-12 million deal for one of your players, especially if you're Dallas, who's just pumping out homegrowns of academy products. And if you're without one of your star starting 11s half the season, yeah, you might miss out on the playoffs then. And
Exactly.
we're gonna get a first. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So look out for our actual predictions. We'll be doing, our straight up predictions the week going into the season. So probably the week of February 20th. That's when Nick and I will put our predictions down on paper and post it up to our website, www.sonsofapitchsoccer.com, and we'll make sure we track those picks throughout the season as we have done in the last 2 years. So these are kind of just giving you an idea of the ceiling and the floor, and look out for that actual pick from each Nick and I coming up the week before the season starts.
And then to wrap up FC Dallas, they begin their season February 29th at home against the Philadelphia Union. So an interconference game. Is that what you'd call it? I can't think of what MLS would use. Cross conference.
East
Eastern
Conference
West
against the Western Conference. There you go.
So an interesting way to start the season, but a good test against a Philadelphia Union squad who's coming off one of their best seasons in club history. So good test for Dallas. Stay tuned to see how they do.
Yeah, Fafa Pico doesn't have to wait very long to test out against his former team. So with that,
That'll be the
enjoyed
headline.
the preview for FC Dallas.
Our first episode of the preseason team previews. We just wrapped up FC Dallas, and now we are going into New York City FC, the citizens of the Eastern Conference defending regular season champions, which we all know means nothing. Doesn't matter how many points you get unless you're out there for the Shield, and no team knows that better than NYCFC. They have always made the playoffs and never made any impact in the playoffs. So, with that, let's take a look at some of the ins and outs of NYCFC. Mike.
So before we get started, Nick, I want to throw out an over-under for our watchers and our listeners. So if you're watching on YouTube, please, in the comments, let us know over-under for the amount of times that you think I am going to talk about New York City's small, tiny baseball field that they play on. If you're listening on the podcast, go find the video on YouTube and put in the comments how many times you think I will talk about that small baseball field.
How many times are we going to talk about NYCFC, Mike? Because that's your answer. Because I don't think you have ever talked about
FC for the next 10 to 15 minutes for their team preview. So anyways, jump on that in the comments down below and let us know.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever been a time we've mentioned NYCFC without you ripping on the size of their baseball stadium. I mean soccer stadium. So the biggest player in isn't a player.
Players in.
Yeah, the biggest player in actually is their coach, Ronnie Delia. At least that's how we're going to look at it. They finally get the new coach. They get I forget where they bring him in from, but we talked about it in last week's podcast. And it's going to be up to him now to really get this roster to hit that next gear. New York City did it for the second half of last season. It's a great result. While the rest of the Eastern Conference was floundering, NYCFC hit their stride, won the conference, got the home playoff games, and unfortunately was unable to advance to the MLS Cup Finals out of it. So is Delia going to be able to kind of recreate that same spark, but earlier on in the season, maybe get his players some rest then later on in the season, or push for a supporter shield to actually win a trophy for NYCFC. The other players that they brought in were Gideon Zalala from Kansas City, Keaton Parks, who was originally one of their own, but now they brought him back from Benfica, and defender Tavon Gray, a homegrown product who is going to help solidify that backline for them. Some of the players on the outs, Ben Sweat was lost to Inter Miami in the expansion draft, as well as Daniel Bedoya, Jeff Caldwell, Eric Miller, Abdi Mohammed, and Ebenezer Ofori all had their options declined. These are guys whose names I'd never heard of before, so probably just depth pieces that NYCFC isn't going to miss too much.
Yeah, I think the biggest loss for NYCFC is definitely Ben Sweat, losing him to Inter Miami in the expansion draft. He's a guy who actually did play meaningful minutes for them, was a starter for them. Got a taste of USMNT camp as well, last year at some point. So definitely a big loss there. As far as bringing guys in, not a lot of movement, but that's because they haven't had a coach. So they just got the coach, Ronnie Delia, which, as you said, we're not really expecting big things from him. He did come over from Norway. And then, he did have some experience with Celtic as well over in Scotland. So he does have that big name club, kind of, if you want to consider Celtic in that list of big named clubs, which I think they do. But I don't know how that's going to translate to success here in MLS. So that, as far as the players in and out, I think the out really only is Ben Sweat. And then the in, Keaton Parks would be the biggest name, but he played for him last year. He just brought him in on a permanent. So you kind of have to mention it in this spot, but it is what it is.
So moving on to the designated players, New York City got their 3 DPs. We all know who they are. These are the household names of NYCFC. Alexandru Mitrita, their striker. Maxi Morales, their kind of do everything, go everywhere engine of the team in the midfield. And Jesus Medina, one of their most consistent players. But Mike, you note that he might be on the outs. What makes you say that?
Yeah, so they've been rumored to been looking at a couple DP options to bring in, such as I know they're rumored to bring in Pedro from Chelsea, the winger there that plays Medina's position. So they've also been looking at some rumors about some DP level signings. So it's not going to be Mitrita. He's not going anywhere. The same with Maxi Morales, who's kind of the face of that franchise. So from what I'm gathering, Medina he wasn't playing a lot of minutes towards the end of the season either. He wasn't starting every single week. He did have some injuries that played a part in that. But I question if he's on the outs just because of the rumors that are out there. Maybe he's not on the outs. Maybe they could buy him down with TAM because he is a younger player. Maybe they know something we don't know about these CBA negotiations that are coming up that, maybe he'll be able to be considered a young DP and they're going to have 4 DPs or whatever. There's all kinds of rumors out there as far as CBA negotiations go. So he could possibly be on the outs. It could possibly be with CBA. It could be he's getting bought down with TAMP. Or it could be nothing. He could just be their third DP and it continues on the way it was last year. So that's kind of the thought process on those. Maxi Morales is Maxi Morales. Alexandru Mitrita, he's kind of your midfield end striker, so you're going to see him all over the field. He's hasn't quite lived up to expectations yet, I don't think. I think he another season in MLS will be good for him. It could really help him kind of hit that next level, which is going to be one of the top echelon DPs in the league. It could happen. It might not. What are your thoughts with those guys, Nick?
Actually, I'm glad you went right where I wanted to go because Mitrita came in the summer transfer last year, I believe, or if they did bring him in early on in the season.
I think they brought him in the beginning of the season. Yeah.
So he came in, but he only made appearances in 29 games. He started 24 games, but had 12 goals. So now that he's got that full MLS season under his belt, he kind of knows what to expect from the competition, knows what to expect from just playing in America, the travel, the coast-to-coast travel, the stadiums, the fans, the expectations and the pressure of playing in a major market like New York City. I think now that he's had a whole year to digest that, and even so, scoring in every other game he started last year, I think he's only going to improve upon that. This guy's going to be the focal point of their offense. He's going to be a threat every time he's on the ball. And he could have a 15 to 18 goal season with no worries, no issue whatsoever. I don't know if he's a golden boot kind of guy, just the way that NYCFC plays, because they do have a possession game. They do have a number of guys who can find the back of the net. So I don't think he's going to put up Carlos Vela or Joseph Martinez numbers. But this guy is still going to be one of the most dangerous strikers in the league, after especially having that second season. And he's only 24. He's turning 25 in February. So he is in the prime of his career. He's got young legs. He's going to do really good things for NYCFC this season.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's what has to happen for NYC as well. Let's talk a little bit about the breakout youngsters. So Breakout youngsters for New York City. They don't have a ton of young talent. One is going to be Keaton Parks. They just bought him permanently from Benfica. Is this his time to shine?
It better be. I mean, again, if New York City wants to fill their trophy case, then they definitely need him to step his game up. He's a midfielder, and we know with a team like NYCFC who likes to hold possession, who likes to knock the ball around a little bit and kind of probe the opposing defenses, his play is going to be very important. His possession, his passing, and his ability to find the open man or hit that switch when it's needed. So he's going to have his best season for New York City to have their best season. And obviously coming over from Benfica, he got a lot of exposure to that kind of style of play over in the Spanish league over there. So yeah, this could be his breakout year, or to kind of factor it into our floor and ceiling. I mean, he could just come back to the United States and just forget how to play soccer and just be terrible. I doubt that's going to happen, especially someone who's gotten a couple USMNT looks. I really think he's just going to continue to develop and to be surrounded by guys like Maxi Morales and Alexander Mitrita. It's only going to help him develop his game.
Yeah, for sure. Another guy on that list is James Sands. This is kind of a central defensive midfielder player. He's kind of been with their squad now for, I think, about a year or so since he signed a homegrown. The reason why I put him on this list, and I'll be 100% honest, is because the dude has crazy potential on FIFA 20 in career mode. This is one of the best young players at that position in the world. When I picked him up on my FIFA 20 career mode, he ended up growing like crazy and got really good really quick. So other than that, I don't know much about him. Nick, do you know anything about this guy?
No, but it sounds like this is another case of, is it art imitating life or life imitating art here if we're going to base our preview on his FIFA rankings and potential. So we'll see. It sounds like we're going to learn a lot more about James Sands this upcoming season. Do you know, was he a homegrown? Was he a young player with them?
Yeah, I believe he was a homegrown when he came up through their young academy. So yeah, that's from what
I was able to find a quick article that he was NYCFC's first ever homegrown player back in July of 2017. So he played with New York City in 2017, was on loan to Louisville in 18, and now he's back home. So let's see what he can do. And only 19 years old, so he's got a lot of growth. But a guy who could get some minutes for NYCFC in a long season that involves Champions League play.
True. All right, so a projected starting 11 for New York City. This one, again, going with the same formation that they played in their last game of the season last year, was a 4-2-3-1. Now, this might change with the new coach, might put in a totally different system. But a 4-2-3-1 system. We got Sean Johnson in goal. I think there's no question about that one. As far as defense goes, Anton Tinnerholm, one of the better, I believe, left backs in the game, in my opinion. I think he's probably one of the best in MLS. Maybe not in the game of soccer, but in MLS. Chanot, Callens, and Matarita as well from the defense. The two defensive type midfielders are going to be Keaton Parks, who we just talked about, as well as Alexander Ring, another top defensive midfielder in MLS. Then for the kind of wingers, hybrid midfield, attacking mid winger type of player, we're going to have Jesus Medina, maybe, Maxi Morales, Alexander Mitritu, and then the one single forward, I think that will be Hebert. Backed up, it's a really close fight between Hebert and Castellanos. Hebert was a big time guy for Dome Torrent. He really wanted him. Now that Dome Torrent is gone, maybe Victor Castellanos can give him a push for that starting spot. But I'm going to go with Hebert on that one. What are your thoughts on that starting 11, Nick?
Yeah, this starting 11 could be affected by the Champions League play that they're going to be in, starting in a few weeks here against San Carlos on February 20th. So I had imagined they're going to start Hebert just because of how he finished the season last year and with some of his international experience, that he's going to be an excellent fit for Champions League. And then maybe you bring Castellanos in to play some of your domestic games, and that way you can keep kind of those strikers fresh as you slog through this extended season with Champions League play and everything else that NYC is going to get into. If they're going to be in some those random show tournaments against Liga MX or anything else that pops up along the way. So they're definitely going to need to have fresh legs rolling in and out. But yeah, from a starting 11 standpoint, I think you're just about spot on there, Mike. So then out of those 11, who is your most important player? I mean, I think this one's fairly obvious, but why don't you give us your reasons?
Yeah, so you talked a little bit in the previous segments about Alexander Mitricu, and I think he has a very big case for that. However, I'm going to go somebody different. I'm going to go with Maxi Morales, the face of NYCFC. This guy has been a DP, their best player for the last couple seasons, ever since Villa left. And I think he has to be the guy that takes that next step that really is a big-time DP in this league. If he has the seasons that he's had, he's been okay. He hasn't been bad. He hasn't been great either. And if he has one of those seasons, it's not going to be good enough for NYCFC. And they're probably not going to fare that well. They might do well in the regular season, but again, it all comes down to the regular season as well as, the playoffs with New York City. Can they get anything done in the playoffs? I think Maxi Morales has to have a best 11 caliber season for NYCFC to really be successful and make it into the playoffs as a high seed and then possibly go on a run. Now, a thought that I do have is he is the perfect fit for that small field in New York City. He can turn his game. I mean, he is the passing. He's small. He's quick. Same thing with Mitritu. So I think he can really, if he can up his game, he'll be that guy for that small field and do extremely well for New York City.
Yeah, you want to talk small players on small fields. Mitritu's listed at 5'5", and Morales is listed at 5'3".
Yeah.
Kind of crazy to think that I'm taller than both of those guys, and I am by no means a tall person at all. I think on a good day I top out at 5'6". It's pretty ridiculous to feel like that I'm taller than these two guys. Not that they couldn't run circles around me.
Well, exactly. So I guess it comes down to the predictions. What do you think of Nick for ceiling and floor on this one?
So the ceiling, I would say, and I know in your notes you have them finished in second in the East, but personally, I think their ceiling is repeating as top seed in the East. I think with the talent they bring back, if their new coach can get everything in line for them and they get the contributions from their new players, that they could repeat as Eastern Conference champions. The floor, I still think they're too good of a team to ever miss the playoffs. But if everything kind of bottoms out, if they have that CCL hangover, if they pick up a couple injuries and just have tired legs, if there is kind of that struggle with the new coach and the new system, then they probably could finish around 6th-ish in the Eastern Conference, and then just kind of see how they have to do in the playoff. But as you said previously in the FC Dallas segment, we'll give our final predictions and how everything shakes out the week of February 20th.
Awesome. Yeah, I think with New York City FC, the floor might actually be the best case scenario for these guys. The struggles that they've had in the playoffs, Nick. Everybody does. And I think they've always been that top seed in the playoffs, first or second, maybe even third at worst. They were, and of course it just changed to the segment this year, last year, of having the higher seed hosting the game. And we saw what a mess that was with New York City having to go to Citi Field, not Yankee Stadium, that small pitch, even though they made the size of the field at Citi Field the same size so that they could continue to use that competitive advantage. It was a mess. Maybe the best thing in the world for this team would be to finish 7th in the East and not play a game at home for the entire playoffs. Then maybe, that might be the best thing. So I'm going to go out there on a limb and say that's probably going to be the best case scenario for New York City.
Well, with that, fans, that is New York City FC's team preview. You can check them out, like we said, February 20th in CONCACAF Champions League action, as well as throughout the MLS season. Let us know what your thoughts are, especially to our New York City listeners. I mean, is New York going to be blue? Is New York going to be red? Or are the citizens just going to kind of come up short again this season? What are your expectations? Let us know. We're going to take a quick break, and then we will come back with our final team preview with Real Salt Lake. Okay, soccer fans, welcome back to the last segment for our first episode of our preseason team previews. We're going to wrap up with Real Salt Lake and then just cover a few quick headlines that we have seen from around the MLS this past week. But to get back to Real Salt Lake, they had a lot of movement in this offseason. They had 12 players come in and 13 players go out, either declining options, retirement, loans. Notably, players on the way in, goalkeeper David Ochoa, who's a homegrown, forward Julian Vasquez, another homegrown, midfielder Luis Arriaga, homegrown. They've got two other homegrowns. They brought in Kellen Rowe from Sporting Kansas City. They picked up a couple guys from the USL side, but the one name that I want to mention is they picked up defender Alvin Jones, who you may remember played for that Trinidad and Tobago team who knocked the United States out of the 2018 World Cup qualifying. So Alvin Jones is now a defender for Real Salt Lake. So fans, boo him or cheer him as you feel the need to during those games. Now, Mike, you're flipping your hat around here. I'm sorry, I just had to bring it up when I saw it on there.
Boom!
You had some mighty big gesticulations.
Oh man, yeah, no, definitely. That's a tough one to swallow. A guy who, who does that is getting his paycheck from MLS. That hurts.
Yeah. But the players on the way out, again, we got names like Connor Sparrow, Sean Barry, David Horst, Taylor P., DeMar Phillips, Jose Hernandez, Sonny, Ricky Lopez. Like, these are all guys, and Luis Silva, who had their options declined. But Connor Sparrow, as luck would have it for him, just got picked up by the Chicago Fire, who are definitely in need of some depth at goalkeeper. So his career will continue here in Chicago, at least what's left of his career, or what will be of his career. I really don't know if he's on the. I think he's a young goalkeeper, so maybe we'll see him a lot more in the future. But again, some of the other big players, Tony Beltran, one of their defenders, decided to retire, and Danilo Acosta has been loaned out to Orlando City. So one of the more common names for Real Salt Lake over the last couple of years, one of the big playoff guys for them. He is now with the Lions over in Orlando City. So those are kind of the names to keep in mind. I'm really excited to see Kellen Rowe and see what he can do coming over from Sporting Kansas City. Still in the Western Conference, but we'll see what he can bring to RSL. So, Mike, talk to us about their designated players.
Yeah, so they've got 2 out of the 3 DP spots filled as of right now. Those 2 DPs are Sam Johnson, the forward, who had a good end of the season last year. As well, we've got Albert Rusnak, from the midfielder from Slovakia. This guy, he is probably the best player on that team. A great player, has scored a good amount of goals, kind of hitting his stride here in MLS to really becoming a top-notch player in the league.
Absolutely.
That third spot, what are they going to do? Are they going to sign somebody here before the season? It's RSL, kind of one of the more of the lower budget type clubs. Are they going to flash some cash? Or are they not? That's kind of the question out there. Do you have any inside track on that there, Nick, or any thoughts on that?
Look, they spent so much time trying to re-sign Kyle Beckerman. I don't think that we're going to see them fill that third DP slot unless they are in contention come the summer transfer. If they are in the top half of the table or, close to finishing top half of the table, maybe they go for it. Maybe they sign that big name and use that as kind of a springboard for the playoff push to secure the high seed and hopefully make a run at the Cup. Otherwise, I just don't see them bringing in a big name DP at this point in the offseason. They
Okay.
do have a couple of really good youngsters that could have some breakout seasons. So if these young guys end up contributing to the team, all the more reason not to spend your money on another DP. I want to point out Milan Iloski. He's a forward. He spent 3 years at UCLA, which is one of the biggest soccer programs, college soccer programs in the country. So he checks that box for me. He scored all sorts of goals. I don't know what kind of accolades that he earned at UCLA, but a top goal scorer at UCLA, I think he's going to translate pretty well to the MLS. He's just got to get acclimated to that game speed and some of the other nuances of the game, that Joe Falla mentioned in our interview last week. So I expect if he can really break out, if you could get consistent play from the other DPs, maybe you don't go ahead and sign a third DP at this point. Now you wanted to talk about Michael Chang as a potential breakout youngster as well.
Yeah, I think that's a guy who has definitely put up those types of numbers in the USL can can probably get it done in MLS as well, and maybe not to the same level, but I think you could see big things out of him.
Yeah, the all-time assist leader in the USL probably is going to have a few more points here in MLS. As far as my starting 11 on this one, I mean, who knows but the coach at this point? There's been a lot of turnover on the roster, as we noted. Beckerman just re-signed, so I put together the starting lineup yesterday, and Beckerman re-signed with the team today. So I don't know if that means he's going to be in the lineup or if he's going to be more of that glorified super sub kind of guy that comes in. But Beckerman,
He'll be in the lineup.
yeah. So this was the pre-Beckerman signing lineup. He'll probably slip in there for Everton Luis that I have. But just some trivia here. I think Beckerman is the all-time MLS leader in games played for field players.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure Nick
I believe
Romano is the
that.
all-time leader in games played. So two guys for RSL are leading the MLS there. But anyway, back to my projected starting 11. In goal, I've got McMath, and then the defensive line of Glad, Jones, Herrera, and Silva. Midfield of Beasler, Krylak, Rusnak, and Everton Luis / Kyle Beckerman. And up front, Corey Baird and Jefferson San Marino as kind of the two-headed strike monster up there. They're going to need a lot of offense on this team in order to offset the turnover on the back line and the loss of Nick Romano in goal.
So surprise there, Nick. You don't have the designated player, Sam Johnson, listed in your projected starting 11. That's is there a reason for that?
So I don't know how. I didn't follow RSL very closely last year. I'll be honest about that. But I know Baird and San Marino are their two names, and maybe Baird slips back into a more midfield spot. I don't know much about Sam Jones. Let me see if I can pull up an article on him right now and just kind of see what his stats were last season. But
I know he's
not
a speed guy. I know he's definitely got speed, so he could come off the bench.
It's not outside of the realm of possibilities for a DP to not be your regular everyday starter. So it sounds ridiculous. It sounds it doesn't sound like you're getting your value here, but looking at his stats from last season, which was his first season with RSL, he only started 15 games. He played in 24 and only scored 9 goals. So even though he is a DP striker, he really did not get as much time as one would think. Maybe you see an increased role. Maybe you see him emerge in the second half of the season. But based on what he did last season, I don't feel so terrible about leaving him out of the starting lineup.
All right. Good point.
So with that, Mike, who do you believe is the most important player on this team? And then we can jump into the ceiling and floor predictions.
Yeah, so no question on this one. In my opinion, and I'm sure the opinions of many other people, it's got to be Albert Rusnak. He's the best player on that team, hands down. Maybe Corey Baird, Savarino push him for that spot in the next couple of years, but right now it's definitely Albert Rusnak. They need the playmaking that he can provide, as well as, to be able to control the mid and help both the offense and the defense. So I think he's definitely their most important player.
I agree with that 100%, and we'll see if anyone emerges on the defensive side for RSL. We know they can score goals, and they have scored goals in the past, but we'll see if the defense can hold it together enough to win a few games. And if I remember, like RSL had a very even goal differential last year, because one game they'd win 4-0, the next game they'd lose like 3-1 or something like that. So. Yeah. It was feast or famine for RSL, so we'll see if the defense anyone can step up and balance that out. As far as my ceiling, though, despite all of that, what we've said, I really think that their best case scenario is a low playoff seed, somewhere in the 5-7 range. Going away for that first game. If everything comes together, the Western Conference is stacked. So for RSL to have a great season, they're still probably going to finish behind LAFC, Seattle, and whoever else in the West emerges. SKC could be resurgent. The Galaxy with Chicharito. Like, even if RSL has a good season, they're probably only finishing 5th or 6th or 7th. For a floor, to me, it's just an utter collapse. There's a hangover after the Beckerman deal and all of that. That took forever to get done. They lose Acosta and Raimondo. The defense is in shambles, and they just fall apart. That to me is the floor, and they end up as one of the worst teams in the West.
I have to agree with you wholeheartedly, sir.
Well, thank you for that, Mike. And with that now, we'll wrap up that RSL preview. Their first game is the 29th of February at Orlando City. So again, a little east-west to open up the season. We'll see how they can fare against Orlando City, what starting lineup they roll out, and how much Kyle Beckerman's going to be involved now that he's re-signed officially. So wrapping up RSL, now let's move into a few MLS headlines. So Mike, what have you noticed around the league over the last week that's making news?
Yeah, so first off, we just talked about it in the RSL preview, is that Kyle Beckerman re-signed with RSL. I think the biggest question here is Beckerman kind of past his prime and on the downslide of his career? Is this the type of signing where, he's expected to be less of a impact player like he wasn't, in the past? I don't know. It's kind of a head scratcher. I think with how long it took to get it done, my thinking was that they were going to move on because he really didn't make a huge difference for that club last season. He helped a little bit, but not a big time difference maker. So I don't know. That's kind of the first piece of news that I thought was a little bit interesting, and I wanted to kind of hear your take on that. Do you think he's going to be that, that starting guy, a bench guy, kind of that veteran presence? I mean, what are you looking for from Kyle Beckerman?
I mean, starting or not, he is the veteran presence on that team. And I've never really liked Beckerman's style of play. I've always been critical of him, both for RSL and for the United States men's national team, as he always looks to pass back first or to slow it down and set up a possession when I really want to see more of a fast attacking play from him. I really thought that his teams would be better served if Beckerman would turn upfield rather than just try and settle the game down. I noticed a lot of his passes go backward, and I haven't really looked at any of the advanced stance to see if my eye test is backed up by that. So depending on how this team wants to play, maybe he is your regular starter because they do have a young defense or kind of a rebuilt defense. Maybe he's going to slip back into a center defender role, kind of like how Michael Bradley did when TFC was plugging holes a couple seasons ago. So that wouldn't be outside the realm of possibilities from Beckerman. But yeah, now that they've signed him, he's definitely got some utility. Probably still has a few minutes left on his legs, and good for him for getting the deal done, I guess. Again, I never really liked him. I guess the coolest thing about him was his haircut, but he would have had cut the dreads off recently too. So I don't know if there's much for me to like about Kyle Beckerman anymore.
All right, so then let's talk a little bit about Chicago Fire. Kind of a nice segue was that they picked up Connor Sparrow from Real Salt Lake, since we've been talking so much about Salt Lake. I have a question about this, though. I know they're trying to bring in some competition for Kronholm there. My question is, this guy, he's coming from a team that just lost their starting goalkeeper to retirement, Nick Romano. So you've got an open spot there. He's going to move up the depth chart there, you would think. What is the point of signing somebody like this? And as well, I know you want to talk about Frank Lopez getting signed as an assistant coach for this squad. I just want to say that when I was on with Spitting Fire and during the roundtable with Men in Red 97, as well as a couple other gentlemen, they were really high on Frank Lopez and thinking, he's kind of been the heart of the Fire. So I'm interested to hear what your take is on this, Nick, because I think we both agree on it. I just kind of sat back and was quiet during that part of our conversation there with Spitting Fire and those gentlemen. So what are your thoughts on Connor Sparrow and Frank Lopez, Nick?
Well, for Connor Sparrow, yeah, it's definitely interesting because he's a young goalkeeper. Let's see here. He's only 25, so he's got a lot of his goalkeeping future ahead of him because we know the career of goalies can stretch a lot longer than most field players. But he's got some MLS experience. He has played with RSL. He's played on the Real Monarchs, the USL affiliate. He had some time with Nashville as a USL team last, I think 2019, excuse me. So he can compete with the goalkeepers that are on the Fire roster and maybe emerge as the starter depending on his training camps. Good for Chicago, bringing in players to compete, bringing in depth at positions. I'm okay with that. The Frank Klopas hire, though, on the other hand, the only thing it's good for me is getting him out of the broadcast booth so I don't actually have to listen to him talk when I'm watching Chicago Fire games. He's a terrible broadcaster. One of the things about Frank Klopas as a coach, he was 3 years coach with the Chicago Fire. He had a 500 record with Chicago, just under 500, I should say. And then he coached a couple seasons with Montreal, and I think his overall MLS coaching record was around like 37% or something like that. His win percentage was around 37%. So not a good winning record as far as being a coach. And I think that the people who are so happy to get Klopas back in the organization are just that nostalgic, those nostalgic type people who are like, oh yeah, tradition, honor, passion, all that good stuff about the Chicago Fire. Well, it's a new team with new ownership and new management, and new players. It's a new MLS. So you want to say Frank Klopas was like the heart of this team. Like, okay, you bring him back to kind of pay homage to old school Fire, but then you rebrand. You do a complete 180 with your coaching staff. You don't sign any kind of players that kind of fit the same mold as Klopas. Like, what are you going to do? Hire him to be an assistant coach, but really just let him cheerlead and like be your hype man and get your players hyped up? It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, if you want to pander to the fans, change the logo back. Like, don't go hire Frank Klopas. And I'm happy for the guy. Like, he's back on the sidelines. I'm sure he loves being there. And as a fellow Greek person, always nice to have Greeks in these types of positions. But I just don't understand it from an organizational standpoint. When you're trying to do so much to change, why you go back to a guy like Frank Klopas to put him back on the sideline. Doesn't make any sense to me, Mike.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's kind of an interesting spot. You can't talk about his head coaching experience in an assistant coaching role. It's really, you're not going to see much of a correlation between the two. It's not his team. He's got a boss to answer to, and I think it's definitely a way to try and appease the fans a little bit, the tradition, honor, passion fans, as well as appease a guy in the organization who obviously wants to be there. He's happy as pig in poop, and he just wants to be in the organization. And Mansueto's like, fine, just go on the bench, and you can be on the field. That'll make you happy.
What's the purpose then? Like if you can't evaluate him for his coaching record, then like why is he on the coaching staff? Like what's he supposed to do? Obviously, he's not going to be there to help develop tactics. Like I'm wondering what a specific position is with the staff other than just like assistant coach. Is he going to work with a particular position, group of players? Is he going to develop tactics and formations? Is he going to do scouting of opponents? Like he couldn't figure all that out as a head coach. Now you want to make him an assistant to give him the same role? Like it's again, it just doesn't make sense to me. And if you do want to pander to the fans, there's 1,000 other ways you can do it. Give free tickets for a home game. Like change the logo back. I've said it before. I'll say it again.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different things you could do. Some Soldier Field stuff. Have events around Soldier Field. It just seems like such an odd thing for an organization who wants change to go back and hire this guy.
Agreed. And with that, we have got to wrap this episode up. It's been awesome talking about starting team previews and starting to talk about these clubs. Let us know, fans, if there's anything that you want to hear about towards the end of our episodes. Shoot us a quick message at podcast@sonsofapissoccer.com or hit us on Twitter @SOPsoccer, and or just jump in and join our live event on Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Central, where you can ask all the questions you want to yours truly right here. So thanks for joining. Thanks again to our sponsors and our listeners. We could not do it without you guys. Much appreciated. We will talk to you guys very soon later on this week with another episode of Team Previews coming at you probably on Friday or so.